Today we're going to cover how to create an H5P interactive video. So we're going to start by opening your Moodle and going to the course of your choice, and then opening your content bank over on the left, and then add, and scroll down until you find the interactive video. You want to make sure that you have the URL for your video chosen. You'll click this plus sign and paste the URL for the video here. You will need to title the video, both at the top and down where it says the title of this interactive video. You have a few more options here: hide title on video start screen, a short description, poster image. But let's look at the behavioral settings. The first behavioral setting lets you start the video at any point you want. You can also autoplay the video, loop the video, override the show solution button so that they don't have the option to see the answers to the questions while they're taking the video quiz, and then the retry button as well, so they can have multiple attempts. You can start with the bookmarks menu open, show button for rewinding 10 seconds, and prevent skipping forward in a video and deactivate the sound. Now when it comes to prevent skipping forward in the video, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this has the rewind 10 seconds button set up there, but then you see they can't drag the video forward or backward. And so this video is 33 minutes long. And so that's not necessarily something we want, because that means they have to dedicate 33 minutes at one time to this video, because they won't be able to come back and work on it again later without rewatching the whole thing. So with that setting off, they're able to drag through the video and find the spot that they need. And they can even actually click on those little circles, which are questions, and go straight to a question if they need to. To add a label, you'll click the top left button, and you get to choose the display time, which is the time that the label appears in the video, and then what time the label will go away, and then you will type the content of the label in this box. Another important thing to point out is the difference in done, delete, save, and cancel. This is a design flaw in H5P and something that you really need to be aware of. Done and delete will save or delete the particular question that you are working on. Save and cancel are for the entire H5P video. So if you accidentally hit cancel, it will delete everything you have done since you last saved your H5P. So if for some reason you decide you don't want that label or question or whatever you're working on, make sure you hit delete instead of cancel and save often. This is what your label will look like in the course, and you can just click on it and move it wherever you want. Next, to add text to your video, you'll click the T for text. And again, you can choose the display time, how long you want it to show up on the video. You can click whether you want it to pause while the text is up, and you can choose whether you want a button or a poster. The button will show a button that they have to click to see the text, which will look like this. So that is the text button. If you click the poster, it will actually show up on the video like this. So to edit it, I'll go back in there. And this is where you'll add the actual text that they'll see. You don't have to have a title for it. They'll never see that title. It's really more for you You can also add visuals where you change the background color behind the text and choose whether or not the box has a shadow. You can also make the text go to a different place in the video by choosing timecode, or a URL by choosing another page URL. And if you do that, you can click this visualize and it will change the way it looks. This can also be moved around and placed wherever you want in the video just by dragging. Next, we're going to add a table. So if you want to add a table, you'll just go in and change that example content that it's giving you for heading column 1, row 1, column 1, and so forth. You'll be given that option of button and poster again. So again, if it's a button, they'll have to click on it to open it. If it's a poster, when you go out into the course or go out into the video, it will just show up. And you can change the size by just dragging and then stick it wherever you want it on the video. You can also add a link by clicking the little link button. You can choose when that link will display and the title of that link. And then you'll enter the URL. You can choose what kind of background and whether or not it has a shadow, but they'll see the title, and then again you can move that wherever you want it on the video. You can also add a still photo to your video. So choose how long you want it to display, and whether you want it to be a button or a poster. Again, if it's a button, they have to click it. If it's a poster, it just shows up. And then add and find your image. You have to have an alternative text, and this is what will be read to the student if they are visually impaired and have that set up on their computer. And hover text is optional, but if they hover over the picture, they will see this text. So as you can see, you can move it wherever you want, and they will actually have to go out into the video. So I'll save and go out into the video, and it displays for those 10 seconds, and when you hover over it, you see my hover text. Next is adding a statement. A statement is something a little bit different than you've probably seen before, but it's kind of a type of question. So again, I'm going to change it to poster so we can see it. But ultimately with statements, you will come up with 2 to 4 to 5 statements, and only one of those statements is true. And you'll write the true statement in the first box and the other statements in the other boxes, and then the students will choose which statement is true. You can also add a tip for all question types, though I'll only show you that here, and we'll look at what that looks like to the student when they're answering the question. You can add feedback, and you can just do general feedback, or you can add feedback range. So if they get a 0 to 70, they get this particular feedback. If they get 70 to 100 or 71 to 100, they get this other feedback. You can do as many score ranges as you would like. That's entirely up to you. Adaptivity is something else that you can do. So what that does is if they get it correct, they will be able to skip to the time code or to the time in the video that you put in that time code, and that button will say skip ahead. If they get it wrong, you can have them go back and review the information, and they'll see go back on that button. So I have it, if they go right, they'll go ahead to 11 minutes, and if they get it wrong, they'll go back to the beginning of the video. You can also allow them to opt out and just keep watching the video in sequence. So this is what this question will look like. If they get it correct, you'll see that little button there says skip ahead. And if you click that, you go 11 minutes into the video. So they get to skip that content because they already know it. If they get it incorrect first, even if they then go back and get it correct, and this is that tip that we were talking about. Even if they go back and get it correct the second time, they still have that button that says go back. And that's that feedback for an incorrect question. And that took them back to the beginning of the video. If you have opt out, they can not click anything and the video will just keep playing. So you can also add a single choice set, which is basically just a couple of multiple choice questions in a row. So you usually want to pause the video for that and make sure that the 2 times are correct. I'm doing a poster. I have 2 questions here, so you'll enter the question there and then the answers there. The first one needs to be the correct answer. And so then the second question, and again, the first one needs to be the correct answer, and it will shuffle them for you. You can do the feedback again. This one has behavioral settings, though. The auto continue makes it go to the next question. You can have sound effects, a retry button, and all the things that you can have for all the questions, like the action on all correct and action all wrong that we just looked at. You also have require full score for proceeding, which is an interesting option. So this is what this looks like. They'll answer this question, and then it will just automatically go to the next question. And since I clicked enable retry, they could retry that. Multiple choice question is just your standard multiple choice question. Again, you can pause, and set the time. You do want to title these questions, but then you're just going to put the question and then the options. That final option there is correct. So make sure you mark the correct answer. You can do your feedback again. So behavioral settings, you have the retry button. You have this show solution button, which gives them the answer. I'm unclicking randomize because I did all of the above, so I don't want them shuffled. You can choose whether it's checkboxes or radio buttons. If you want to leave enable show solution, you can click this require answer before the solution can be viewed. So they have to attempt it before they can see the answer. This is just for confirmation dialog. You can have it automatically check the answers, show a pass percentage, score points. Adaptivity is the same on all of them. And this is what it will look like to the students. Next up is a true-false question. This is very similar to true-false questions that you add in other places. Again, you have your display time. You have to choose between a button and a poster. Label will be displayed next to the button. So if you do want to do the buttons, then you can have this label show up next to it so that it's not just a button. They can actually see that they need to click there. You do want to title your questions, and I'll show you why on the submit screen. But this is where you actually type your question. And then you will choose whether the correct answer is true or the correct answer is false. Your behavioral settings are pretty much the same. Retry button, show solution button, confirmation dialog, all of the stuff. Adaptivity is the same. And this is what your question will look like. And so that label has that click here to see the question. So it's not just the button, it also has that label. Next up are fill in the blank style questions. So you'll click fill in the blank. Again, choose your display time. Choose whether or not you want to pause. Choose if you want to use a button or a poster. And this is where you will type the actual question. So you just type the sentence, and then the word that needs to be typed in by the student will go in asterisk. You can also do multiple words. It doesn't have to just be one word. Note, though, that the period should go after the asterisk. Otherwise, they will have to type in the period. So you can also do more than one. And unlike a single choice set, they'll show up on the same screen if you do this. So you can have them do multiple on the same screen. Behavioral settings, one of the main things that's different is case sensitive. You can choose whether or not they have to have the correct case. And at the bottom, you have accept minor spelling errors, which is sometimes important for fill in the blank questions. Everything else is pretty much the same. Your adaptivity is the same. And if you have a button, obviously you'll just see that button. If you have a poster, this is what your poster question will look like. Make sure that the box is big enough that they can see the question and the check button. Next up is adding a drag and drop picture. So like everything, you'll want to choose display time. If you want to pause, choose whether you want a button or a poster. I'm going to do a poster so we can see the drag and drop. Next, you're going to add an image for them to drag and drop onto. So I'm just going to pick this random image on my computer. And then once you have your image, you'll do task. And now we're going to identify the drop zones. So I'm going to put one over this coffee cup. And they will not see this label unless you click show label. So I'm just going to put coffee cup in the label so that I know what it is and I know which word to match it to when I add the draggable words. Now I want this drop zone to only be able to contain one element, and I want to auto align so that they don't have to drop it in exactly the right spot. They can just kind of get close to that square. So I'm going to edit that because you can't even see the coffee cup anymore, and change that background opacity so that it is a little more visible. And then I'm going to add the text that I want them to drag into this spot. So I'm just going to have them drag the words coffee cup in, because this is a very simple example. Again, they won't see that label. That just tells me what to click there in the drop zones. And then I'm going to move that over to the edge so it's kind of out of the way. And that's where it will show up and they will drag from. I'm going to add a couple more drop zones. I'll add one over the door. And drag it where I want it. I forgot to change the opacity on that, so I'll need to change that in just a second. I did 50 on the other one, so I'll do 50 on this one as well. 0 would make it completely clear. And I think I'll add one over the frame as well. I'm going to change it while I'm here this time instead of going back to change it. And then drag that one where it goes. And then I'll add their text elements. So just the words door. And then I'll choose the door drop zone. And then the word frame. First I'm going to move this over by coffee cup, kind of try and make it the same size as coffee cup. Because again, this is the way the students are going to see it. And then I'll add frame. See how this does not look like the others? It's because I forgot to click frame. So at that point, it was just text in a box. It wasn't actually something that they could drag and drop in this assignment. So this is really important. After you add the text, you have to go back to the items and select the correct text to go with them. Otherwise, it will not count them as correct. So go back to the item, click edit, and make sure you match it to the thing. You got a few different behavioral settings on this. You can apply penalties, make the whole thing just 1 point or multiple points. You can change the background opacity for all your draggables at once. Few different options there. Adaptivity is exactly the same as on everything. And this is what the final product will look like. So the students will just drag and drop over the correct elements. And ta-da! Next is adding a mark the words activity, where you can type a statement or a paragraph and have students identify specific words. As always, you're going to choose your display time, whether or not you want to pause, whether you want a button or a poster. Task description is going to be the actual instructions for the students. So we're going to go with click on the words that start with the letter K. Next is the actual text where they will identify the words. So I'm going to put, I love to eat Rice Krispies. And I'll put the Krispies in asterisks because it is one of the words they should identify. And then I'll add another K with my little sister Caitlin. Note that the period was inside the asterisk. That is not important with this one. Behavioral settings and activity options are all the same. And make sure the box is big enough that they can see the entire question and the check button. So they're going to click Krispies and Caitlin, and that will look a little different in their view. So let's look at that. And we'll go to that question, and they can click Krispies and Caitlin. Now they could have clicked any of those words, but that is how those work. All right, next is drag text, which is different from drag photo because you're going to drag text into text. So as always, you have all those options at the top. Here's where you're going to put your text. This is really more useful when you have a sentence that you want them to complete with a couple of different blanks or words to fill in, because there isn't an option to add extra drag and drop words for them to choose from. For that, you would need to do a multiple choice question. Also, drag and drop is not always compatible with touch screens, which is something important to keep in mind. So then we're going to have them drag a few of those words into the box. So we'll put those words in asterisks. And let's see, touch. Okay, and so we're going to make that bigger so they can see the whole thing. And then this is what this will look like from their end. So the words are out here on the right. And they'll drag them into the correct places within the passage. Very similar to drag and drop with a picture, just text only. Next, I'm going to show you how to add a crossroads. These are pretty neat. So for our question text, we'll put, do you want to continue to the next stage? And we'll call the next stage plan. Skip ahead to differentiation, or go back and review from title or the beginning or something. So what you're doing is you're allowing them to choose where they want to go in the video. So I'm going to let them go to plan, differentiation, or back to the beginning. So plan starts at 11:12, we'll say, which is right after this particular crossroads pops up. And so we'll call that button, or this will say the video will start from the plan stage, or section. Next, we called that section differentiation. And so we'll say that's a little farther ahead in the video. We'll call it 11:58. If they choose this one, it will say the video will restart from the differentiation section. And we'll add a third choice and let them go back to the beginning and review if they'd like. And we're calling that one title, so we'll go back to 0. And the video will restart from the beginning. So this just gives them the option with what they want to do, where they want to go in the video. So this is what it'll look like. We're going to make that a little bigger. And if we actually go out into the video to see what the students would see, we see that it will look like this. And they can click plan. And they get that message and they continue. And it just takes them right to the next part of the video. It's almost like they just kept playing. If they click differentiation, it will take them to 11:58 or whatever we decided differentiation was. And then title will take them back to the beginning. To add a navigation hotspot, you can choose a time code or a URL. So what that is that will allow them to go back to the beginning. It's very similar to the Crossroads, but it'll just kind of be a link to another spot in the video, or it could just be a link, and it will kind of have a little bit more emphasis put on it with the pointer cursor and blinking effect. You do have to have an alternative text for ADA purposes. And you might want a label to show them what will happen when they click on this hotspot. You could choose the color of the label, and that's what that will look like for the students. And you can make that smaller, bigger, wherever you want to show up on the screen. Next is bookmarks. So you'll click that little shape there to add bookmarks. So just go to the place you want to add a bookmark in the video and click that little shape and then name that bookmark. So we're going to call this section 2. We'll go over here and call this section 3. And we'll do one more over here for section 4. So those don't really actually do anything in the video. They're just going to show up as lines. So if you look at the video, there will be lines across the bottom. And you can't actually click the lines or anything. You can just kind of click to that general area. And so it will allow students to go to those specific spots in the video. And there was something called a bookmarks menu that you can add so they can see the titles of those and go to specific spots in the video if they would like. So you saw where you could change the place where the video starts. You can also change where the video ends to some extent. Just drag it to where you want it to end and add the submit screen, which is that little star. So you can add it there, or you can have it at the end of the video. But either way, students need to know about that submit screen because they have to click on it. Next is adding a summary task. This is completely optional, and it's exactly like the statements question. So you will just have them choose the correct statement. The first statement will be true. The other statements will be false. It's kind of just like a quiz at the end, but you can only have this particular type of question. Again, completely optional. So We'll make this statement true, this statement false. You can actually do more than one set. So this statement is also true and is a separate question. So you can't have multiple true statements in the same question. And this statement is false. And we'll look at the way that will look for the students. You can choose where it displays. We'll change it to 2 seconds before the video ends. You could do 0 seconds. Kind of depends on what the end of your video is like. Behavioral settings. These are the things from the beginning. Okay, so for the students, that will just look like a final question. But it's button only. There's no poster option. And again, it's only that one question type where they have to choose the correct statement. And finally, this is what the submit screen looks like on their end. And this is why you want to make sure and title your questions. See here, you have Untitled Summary or Question 2, and it kind of gives them an idea of what they've answered, and they have to make sure and click Submit. Next is adding it to the class. Go to where you want to add it, add an activity. Make sure you choose the blue one instead of the black one. The black one you actually create it in the activity, H5P blue, you create in that content bank, and it gives you more options. So you name it, and this is what the students are going to see in the class. And then you go down to Files, and make sure you click Content Bank. It might show up on Upload a File, but go to Content Bank, and you should see what you just created. Now you can make a copy of the file, which is going to create a copy of the video exactly as you just did it, or create an alias, and if you make any changes in the Content Bank, it will also change it here. So for options, you can allow them to download the video. You can include an embed button so they can embed the video elsewhere. And you can include a copyright button if it's your material. Grade is pretty standard. You choose whether you want points, how many points. Although you can't change the number of attempts, you can see how many attempts students have taken, and you can choose which attempt is graded. So if you only want them to have one attempt, you can choose first attempt, but you also have all these other options. Now everything else is pretty much the same, your common module settings of hiding, groups, restrict access. This is the only way you can set a due date though. Because there is not a close date, you can restrict access so that it is hidden after a certain date. And you can make that grayed out so students can still see it, or you can make it where it completely disappears on a certain date. But that's the only way to set a due date on these types of assignments. So this is what it will look like to the students, and they will see that they only have until a certain date to complete it. As always, if you have any questions, please send me an email.